Welcome back to the Leadership Blueprint Growth podcast. Today's guest is Melanie White, CEO and co-founder of Sage Women's Health, and Melanie works at the intersection of women's health, workplace well-being, and leadership, helping organizations retain and empower high-performing women through policy, strategy, and coaching. She's on a mission to break down the stigma around health transitions and build cultures where women can thrive without burning out. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Thanks for having me.
The first question we have for you is, how would you describe the work you do in leadership and executive development for someone hearing about it for the first time?
Okay, well, you could say that quite simply, I work with high-performing women, female leaders typically. Many of them are in midlife, exceptional at what they do, but they're not leading well in work and at home. They're usually acing one area, but because of the changes that happen at midlife, executive function can suffer. They have struggles with processing or making decisions. They feel tired and overwhelmed. So normally something's got to give. It's either great at work and struggling at home or the reverse. So I help them to really feel calm and decisive, empathetic, and to put their well-being first so that they can do the things that they need to do and lead well in all areas of life.
Absolutely. And were you always fascinated with working with high performing cultures, or were you always a high performer growing up? And is that why you chose executive development?
Well, to be honest, Jordan, I was incredibly lazy growing up. I didn't care. I was blasé. I think that's a teenage thing, and I went to university and I thought I need to do something with this. And I tried government and I tried private sector and even academia, and none of it really gelled. And so at 25, I co-founded and ran an environmental consulting business. And I really had to step into a leadership role because we grew fast. There was myself and a co-founder. And pretty soon we had 10 staff and then 15 and 40. We had multiple service lines. We had six-figure projects. We had high pressure in a high stakes industry, which was mining, consulting, and doing environmental work for approvals. So it looked like a huge success on paper, but personally, it was really tough. I was burning out because I'd done a biology degree and suddenly I'm managing a six-figure or seven-figure company. So I was always on. I had imposter syndrome. I had perfectionist tendencies. I was always in doing mode, jumping from meeting to meeting, project to project. I had no space and time to think or reflect or anything like that. And I learned a few things that really shaped my interest in leading high-performing women. One is that well-being is the foundation of leadership. As soon as the gym membership gets cobwebs and you start eating out of jars, you know that something's going wrong because you're not fueling your performance. And the other thing is that women tend to lead differently than men in my experience. They're much more relational. They worry about what people think and getting their words right. They're more collaborative. So there's actually an emotional labor and invisible mental load in that kind of a leadership style. And then you overlay hormone shifts in midlife, energy problems, changes in your body, brain fog, executive function takes a hit. And so that combination became fascinating to me as I've worked through several businesses, but also now in women coming into their 40s who are really struggling with health concerns that are just sometimes tipping them over the edge.
When you are working with organizations, specifically, women-led companies, I guess what are some frameworks or methods that you like to utilize to create that change?
I think a really simple framework that is an overarching thing in all of the work I do is to be firm but fair as a leader. And it's something that a colleague and I came up with years ago at a leadership workshop. And it's really stayed with me because being firm means setting boundaries, managing expectations, being clear on standards, being decisive. And then being fair is empathy, context, respect, treating people well, being collaborative. So those two things, being firm but fair, is really important. And for most women that I work with, the problem isn't a lack of empathy. It's perhaps overusing that strength, not setting boundaries, putting everyone else first and themselves at the end of the list. Yeah, I suppose if we think about perhaps a tool that I've developed, which I call rewiring expectations, most people don't really understand how they operate and don't see themselves. So if I think about helping people first have that awareness and then see where their energy is leaking. So they might be giving too much of themselves away in certain relationships or certain areas and not in others. It's basically, is it a win-win situation for everybody involved? That's what we're aiming to look at. So it's firm and fair, and the leader is winning, but everyone they're dealing with is also winning. So that's kind of stopping that self-sacrificing and operating more strategically.
So you had a seven-figure company with 40 employees, 40 staff, and now you're, an executive coach for women-led companies, and of course, the company you own is also woman-led. How did that transpire? Like, how did you go from A to B?
Well, I burnt out from that company and I moved to the other side of Australia where I knew no one, to start in a new career that I thought would be less pressure. And it was actually really hard because I went from hero to zero. I knew nobody here. We're living in a country town, a regional area, not necessarily my people. And I didn't have a team anymore. And I thought, oh my God, I had to reinvent myself. And I went through a couple of iterations thinking I want to work more in the health and wellbeing space because I could see that was a gap. I could see employees working long hours. Even when you said, no, have flexi days, they'd say, but I have to finish the project. And it seems to be this innate driver that people have, that they want to perform and do more and do better. And that comes with stress that becomes untenable. So for me, it was, how do I build a career around that? And I actually studied personal training and did that for a little while, but I thought this doesn't light me up. And I discovered coaching as continuing education. And I started working with that coaching organization and teaching coaching to other people as well as running my own weight loss business. So I built a 6-figure weight loss coaching business in my regional area.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and I'm pretty sure you're happy that you made that transition, right?
Absolutely, because then that led on to women's health more broadly and the company I have today. I've done some other things in amongst that, but that's kind of the key steps of my transition to where I am today.
I feel like on a personal note, I feel like the most I have grown in life, looking back, is when I did make that quantum leap. Or when I say quantum leap, I mean moving to where no one knows me, or completely jumping
Yeah.
ship and starting something new. Like, part of me desperately wanted to do that, and the other part of me was like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna die. This is like so scary," you know.
Yeah.
But looking back, it was a massive growth opportunity, which led to actual growth. So, right on. And on the topic of you owning the company you currently own, do you have any case studies or specific examples where you worked with an organization or with a specific leader? You applied your frameworks, your methods, and their life completely changed, or their business grew at an exceptional rate by working with you?
I think I'd like to talk about individual leaders because we do work with companies, but I think the real power comes from enabling individuals who are influential and powerful in those companies. So if we think about a real world application or situation, I've got a client recently who I shared my tool with, and two women I can think of actually. One was being really exceptionally strong in leadership at work. She had clear boundaries, expectations, managed relationships well and was respected, but wasn't applying those same skills at home. She was coming home exhausted because she'd been absorbing everything during the day and maintaining those standards. So coming home, it was really difficult for her. And another person at the same time was slipping into stress mode all the time, not setting boundaries at work or at home, and struggling with menopause symptoms. And I think perhaps that's the more interesting case study because normally she would be a very organized person, setting up a bucket list each year. But she'd stopped doing that, stopped going to the gym, felt guilty about not having enough time with her daughter, felt guilty about being grumpy at work. And when we identified exactly where her energy was leaking and where she was giving away too much of herself and not setting boundaries, she was able to make a few small strategic adjustments. And I think the key to that is really creating space for yourself each day to reflect on your priorities, understand how you're going to respond in different situations. So by practicing those things changed. She started making time for herself. She was happier at work. She's exercising well. She's eating well. She feels good. She's got more energy. And she says the biggest thing for her was the mindset shift. She's not feeling like she's held back, restricted, or anything else like that. She feels like she's powerful now, like she's capable, like she can make decisions. So there's a real sense of agency that's come for her as a senior manager in a very big company, that she can now do things that are more positive for herself and for her family and for the people that she works with. And that leads to high performing teams.
I think it's so interesting. If I were to look back in my own life growing up, I didn't necessarily believe in burnout. I'm like, oh, that's, you're just weak, whatever. Until I experienced burnout in my adulthood. And as someone who is a high performer, like you'd mentioned this earlier, there's just something about us that wants to perform, wants to be the best, wants to work all the time. No idea where it comes from, it's just who I am, right? And when I did that for months on end, wasn't happy, obviously was productive, but wasn't happy. And it wasn't until I stepped away from grinding 14 hours a day and I went back to the gym, read some self-help books, meditated daily. It wasn't until then where where I showed up in my profession much better. I was more creative. I had more stressed resilience. I was just overall happier, right? But I just find it to be so interesting that when we actually take a step back from the thing we desperately want to do, and we work less hours in this one thing, and we fill our buckets in the other two areas of life, like family, love, health, etc., we're not only happier, but we perform better in our profession. Like that
Yeah.
back in the day, that would have made zero sense to me. But until I experienced it in real life, I'm like, this is like the secret to life right here. Like live holistically. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And did you find that there was a tipping point where you went, okay, I've had enough and I just need to do something for myself? Did you kind of get to that point?
Yes, I am the self-sabotage king, let me tell you. I went down a horrible negative spiral. I broke up with my long-term girlfriend who I thought I was gonna marry. I used to be an alcoholic and I ended up relapsing on substances. Yeah, like there was definitely a tipping point. Yeah. To make a long story short, I realized what the mistakes were. I've learned an immense amount of lessons from those mistakes. Now I know to stay happy, to stay fulfilled in life, I have to take care of Jordan Lowry. If I don't do that, business is not going well, podcast isn't going well. I have to take care of me first.
Yeah. I think there's a spectrum. We talk about people being selfish on the one hand and selfless on the other, but nobody talks about what's in the middle. And I think that's where we see self love, self compassion, and self care. We've got to stop thinking about, I'll feel guilty if I don't do this, which is giving too much of yourself away, self sacrificing, and then at the other end being apathetic and having compassion fatigue. Stress is really diabolical. And as you've described, it sounds like you went to a really dark place and then you've come back from there. You've had to dig deep and rebuild yourself, but you put yourself in the middle of that. It's like the oxygen mask thing that everyone talks about. Put your own on first.
Yeah, no, great point. Great point. So the girl I used to date that I no longer date, rest in peace to that relationship. She is just like me in regards to feeling guilty when she doesn't work and doesn't take time for herself. What would you say to that one specific woman who is definitely a hype achiever, goes to Stanford, works 12 hours a day? Like what would you say to her?
I would get her to say, what is the cost of that and what is the payoff of that? Because there's something in somebody that wants to work too many hours or give too much away. They're doing it for a reason, right? It's so that they'll be liked or so that they can achieve these perfectionist standards or so that they can feel good about themselves because they have a strong identity around work. But there's a payoff and really evaluating that. We're so busy doing, we don't spend enough time being. We've got to stand back. We've got to zoom out and say, what am I really doing here? What is it worth it? What's it costing me? And it's only then when you have that awareness that you can see what's happening, that then you can make decisions to move yourself in a more positive direction.
That's interesting because for me, when I did lock myself in the room for 14 hours a day, I felt as if I had several different reasons as to why I was grinding for that long and without taking care of me. And I mean, sure, one was prove to myself that I can do it. Two is prove to others that they were wrong. Three, I mean, sure, like I'm definitely financially driven. I want to make money in the world. So I guess those reasons will come. Those reasons for each individual will be different, but the end goal, is it worth it? Like,
Yeah,
I guess
what's
that's
the
like it.
cost? Is it and
Right.
it and the first question then would be of the things that are important to you, how important are they and why do they matter? So really getting clear on the why behind them. And they might be very valid reasons. But then there's also what is the cost of this behavior and am I prepared to wear that cost? And you might be in a startup and you go for 2 years, I'm going to do this, or I'm in a financial hole, I need to work this way for that long. But at some point and in a leadership role and stepping into leadership in a company where you're responsible for teams, projects, clients, there's the impact of stress on your outward facing capability and your capacity to lead. So in that sense, I think really saying, what is this costing me, this behavior, is such an important question.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it back to leadership. How does that typically show up in an organization when a leader is immensely stressed? Deadlines, projects, budgets, team to freaking manage, and they're on the verge of burning out. How does that show up?
Well, there's absenteeism is a metric, I suppose, but the other one is presenteeism. And there was a study done in Australia recently by a university and at one of the big four banks here. They looked at, it was around reproductive health leave, but they did some investigation into presenteeism. And during perimenopause and menopause, so midlife women, presenteeism is 6 times absenteeism, and it's incredibly hard to measure. But what it means is women are showing up and soldiering on, even when they're not at their best. And so you think about what does that look like tangibly is what you're asking. They're grumpy, they're not approachable. They're forgetting things. They're getting things confused. Maybe they've got time blindness if they're in menopause. So they're focusing on something and forgetting that they were supposed to be somewhere else. People around them are starting to go, who's the crazy lady, or she's acting weird, so then there's this kind of backlash, people saying I can't talk to such and such. So then it becomes a performance management issue, or for some women needing to take time off for medical appointments, not disclosing why, and being performance managed out of roles. I'm hearing that too.
Well, that seems a bit unfair.
It's super unfair. And that's why, coming back to the principle of really examining yourself and saying, how am I operating? Am I getting the support I need? And if not, what is the cost of that?
How do most of your clients find you today?
Mostly through word of mouth. So I guess for us to do a really exceptional job of what we do means that we get referrals, and that builds our reputation and credibility. So I guess that's most of our incoming work, and also through partnerships.
Partnerships. Can you describe what partnerships would mean to someone that doesn't know what that means?
Sure. So we have a work in workplace wellbeing with a specialty in women's health and menopause, and we might partner with someone in an insurance setting to deliver a paid workshop on psychosocial hazards in the workplace relating to health concerns. Or we might partner with a gender equality agency to do a workshop on meeting the government required gender equity indicators and how the complexities of that with women's health or in female leadership. Or we might partner with someone who works on confidence in leaders, and we're working on health and mindset. So it's really bringing combined skills together and delivering workshops or coaching programs, that kind of thing, where the person that attends that is getting expertise in 2 complementary areas, and they're getting a bigger picture of a topic rather than just one narrow stream.
Perfect. Thanks for those insights. What leadership challenges do you see becoming more common over the next 1 to 2 years?
I think there's 2. And the first one is that women's health, and particularly perimenopause and menopause, is in the spotlight. We're starting to realize how disruptive it is in terms of capacity, temporarily, of course, only for a couple of years, but executive function, so that all the planning, the deep thinking, the processing takes a hit. And how do companies accommodate or manage that? And then the other part is AI. I think it will amplify productivity, but also insecurity. There will be a lot of people worried about keeping their jobs, being outsourced. So I guess for that one, I think human leadership and authentic interactions can't be replaced by AI. So we need to really think about that and be our authentic selves, to know ourselves, our strengths, and to leverage those things.
Everyone's kind of leaning towards AI and adopting AI in their business, which you should. It's fantastic. However, I think in the next 10, 15 years, the pendulum swing is going to come all the way back to where, no, I miss interacting with humans. Like, talking to AI is cool because it's, AI, but like, I want a real friend. I don't want to put my VR headset on and live in a virtual
Yeah.
reality world. Like, I want a real human interaction. So I think that's the future with AI. But in regards to what you said about women in menopause and pre-menopause, when someone is going through that, women in menopause, and their cognitive ability or like strategic planning has, I guess, not at its peak, would you recommend them delegating some of that stuff to a trusted person to their left or to their right, like a trusted advisor? Or do you recommend another strategy so they can operate at their peak?
Yeah, that is one strategy, because basically what happens over 1 to 6 years, you get hit with a whole range of symptoms that you didn't know were coming and don't necessarily approve of, but they're going to happen anyway. Most women don't know what that is. So the first thing to do is to go and see a doctor, a medical professional, through health insurance or whatever, and get support to manage symptoms. because that's just going to take away a lot of that layer. But when it comes to work and a temporary dip in capacity, I think a really good thing is to do, once again, a self evaluation and say, when is my energy highest? When is my energy lowest? When do I need time off? What tasks am I finding difficult? Can I delegate or outsource some of those? Can I rearrange my day so I'm doing the thinking work at different times of day? Can I start later? So, what are the kind of micro adjustments that can be made? And that does require disclosure too to the people that you're working with or a manager so that they know that something's going on. At least if you're not sleeping well, for example, or your mood's all over the place, letting people know that and working together to find out how do we accommodate that. But those are a couple of ideas of things you could do.
Yeah, I think letting your team know, hey guys, like I love you guys are awesome, but I'm going through something right now. So if I'm quick, if I'm quick to anger or my mood seems to be off, just know I'm going through XYZ. And I think people are very forgiving, right? Like everyone's human. We understand life happens, things come up and you can't be on 100% every single day. That's just unrealistic, you know?
Absolutely. We've got to also just break down the whole culture of silence. And it's hard to speak up, but telling somebody is the first step to making it okay and figuring out what the solution is. If you quietly battle on, it doesn't help anybody. The cost is
For
too
sure.
great.
For sure, and I think it starts from the top down, right? It's not gonna change overnight. If a leader were more open and honest about what they were going through, maybe their staff would be more open and honest, and it would be a better workplace to work at.
Yeah. And one way to think about it is imagine they had a broken arm. You'd work around it. You'd figure out, okay, I can't write or I can't type with my right hand. How do I manage that for the time that my arm is recovering? It's the same kind of thing, or mental health or anything else, pregnancy, any other kind of major life transition or challenge. You always want to work around that and make some adjustments for that time. Makes sense.
Melody, I had such a great time talking to you. Love the energy. Clearly the expert. If someone wanted to explore your work further, where can they find you?
Probably best to connect with me on LinkedIn or to visit our website, which is sagewomenshealth.com, and happy to have a conversation with anyone that wants some help.
Awesome. Melody, again, thank you so much. Audience, thanks for tuning in. Yeah,
It's been great
was
chatting. Thank you.
you're very welcome.